All right, welcome to Warrior Money, the show devoted to supporting our brother and sister veterans in business. I'm Patrick Murphy here with Dan Coons, and today's guest, retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and Special Agent. Now he's an investor, an entrepreneur, a financial coach, and he's so much more. He currently serves as the managing partner at the real estate of Quattro Capital. Please welcome Maurice Philogene. Maurice, welcome to Warrior Money.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
All right, man. We right from the jump with all our guests, we go bluff, bottom line up front.
Yep.
What is the one thing you suggest for transitioning veterans to find their purpose in their next life, their next career?
Yeah, I would say you have to find what it is that you are going to serve. Everything from being in the military, like you just articulated, to me being a police officer in a different career, if you will. It's all I knew. And when I left, I struggled because when you are part of such a large community, a part of a team, let's say a football team, right? You have 10 or 11 women and men looking back at you in the huddle. You want to be part of something bigger than yourself. You get out of the service, you lose that. And you lose the identity. I'll never forget, I was sitting in my car, October 6, 2019, 5 p.m. hit, and I just lost it emotionally because I was like, what am I going to do now? What's my identity going to be and what have you? So it's important to find what it is you're going to serve or whatever that community is going to be.
Yeah, and find that purpose.
Yeah.
It's always helps when you go back to a tribe and join another team or figure out the next step. I know Dan loves this. You got to tell us about the 5 freedoms. Our listeners want to know.
All right. So you guys were talking in the beginning that I coach in lifestyle design. I also coach in wealth attainment and for financial freedom. But I have learned over my lifetime to focus on 5 freedoms, and that's how I have created what I call a lifestyle I don't need a vacation from. So there's 5 freedoms. There's time freedom, financial freedom, geographic or location freedom, which is not necessarily about traveling the world. It's more to be mobile, so you have the opportunity to go do things like me taking a train up to New York today, right? So that's geographic freedom. Freedom to execute your purpose. We need mental and physical space to do exactly what you were talking about, which is find some purpose-oriented thing to be involved in. And then the last one being freedom to build meaningful relationships. My man Dan right here is the reason why I'm able to give back to your community, to say a few things. But I, over the last 20 years, put a lot of effort and time into creating those 5 freedoms in my life.
Yeah, I'm always really curious, really interested, right? So like the military itself is not necessarily known as a freedom organization.
Yeah.
Law enforcement isn't really a freedom-based organization. So can you talk to me about the process that you went through from like establishing yourself as a young professional to the place you are now, where you're thinking about 5 freedoms and you're oriented that way when everything in your resume is like not that way.
Nah.
So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think people have to learn how to leverage the 9-to-5, leverage the military, leverage your service organization to build the lifestyle that you want. So when I went into the service, I immediately started looking for things that would make me feel good. I didn't take a career track because I wanted to get to 06 or to 07 or something like that. I looked specifically for the thing that was going to make me happy on a day-to-day basis. All joking aside, I watched Jason Bourne.
There you go.
Right, I watched my man Jason Bourne.
Bourne? Yeah.
And I said to myself when I watched the first one, this is in 2000. I watched the first one. I was like, how do I become a special agent who works on the Mediterranean? I can do that in the Air Force. We have an organization called Air Force Office of Special Investigations. You're federal agents, just like the FBI. It's like, man, I would be proud and happy and have fun going to work every day. You can find freedom in what you do if you don't just default to doing that journey the way other people are telling you to do it. So I found the thing that would make me happy, and you start to create this level of freedom inside your own organization.
I love that, and it's kind of counterintuitive to the structure of the organization.
Yeah,
but very intuitive, the idea that these places are massive organizations. You can find a home doing anything you want to go do.
Yep, for sure.
So now you're in real estate. You're a producer, you're a podcast, you're a life coach. Like, talk to me a little bit about how you got involved in real estate principally. Like, how is that enabling you to do the freedom that you're looking at now?
Yeah, so there was 2 critical events in my life. One was that my father was smart enough to send me to France to travel for 30 days when I was 15 years old. So I was an inner city kid from Boston, Massachusetts. Learned that life was so much more than just running the streets. That was the first thing. So it made me very curious about the world. The second pivotal event in my life was when I was 21. I found the book Personal Finance for Dummies. Okay. It had a phrase in there called passive income, and something clicked. And passive income to me was a way to generate money without physically having to be somewhere. So what clicked in my mind was, if I can generate passive income, then I can go back to when I was 15, because I could have all these experiences around the world and not physically have to be somewhere. Enter real estate. That's where real estate came from. So from age 25 all the way till now, I started investing. Well, from 25 to 38, I was investing in single family homes. I was taking my 9-to-5 paycheck and I was systematically buying homes and paying them down over time, because I got advice from an amazing real estate agent who said, I know we get pensions in the military, but she said, Maurice, if you buy 12 single family homes and you pay them off, you're creating a pension for yourself. And it stuck with me. So by the time I was 38 years old, I had bought 35 homes, sold some of them that appreciated, paid off 8. I found myself with 18 paid off homes in 2014, generating 13 grand a month. I bought my freedom. I earned my freedom, I should say. And what ends up happening when you have enough money to cover your basic needs without going to work, you start to realize that life was never about money in the first place. Relationships, experiences, culture, building businesses, having fun, coming up to New York if someone asks you to, so you can expand who you are as a person. So it was those two pivotal events that kind of opened my eyes to, yes, you can be in the military. Yes, you can be a police officer. And I was also in corporate as well. But let's leverage financial tools like real estate to build a lifestyle such that you can be more expansive in other areas of your life too.
Tell us about Quattro Capital.
Yeah.
You're the managing partner there. Tell us about how you got involved.
Yeah. Quattro's a great story. So we are a private equity investment firm, primarily syndicator. So we're buying apartment complexes, raising investor funds with amazing people like yourselves. There'll be limited partners. We'll be the general partners. We'll own and operate the apartment complex, improve it. People don't realize that an apartment complex needs to be renovated every 6, 7, 8 years. Otherwise, you still have green linoleum from the 80s in it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can buy it with a good basis, improve it, get the net operating income up, and then proportional to that increase in value, we can sell it and everyone generates a profit. But when I went on that single family journey, this goes back to what any military member or any professional should think about. I went on that single family journey, earned my financial freedom with single family real estate, but I had stopped growing. I was pressing repeat. You can press repeat in the entrepreneurial space too. So I sought out the next thing to do, and I just naturally landed in multifamily. My now business partner, Aaron Hudson, asked me one day, hey, Maurice, I've got these other folks. Do you want to buy an apartment complex together? I didn't want to do it because I was so good at the single family, but I realized I needed to expand and shift, which is what military members need to do coming out. So we bought an apartment complex, and since then we've done 31 or 32 more. And it was not about money for me because I had already earned my basic financial freedom. It was, how do I help other people do it faster?
Yeah.
And that's where Quattro Capital came from. We help people do that.
How about to the veterans out there, right? Whether they're transitioning or they're still on active service, how could they leverage, say, things like the GI Bill or the VA home loan?
In so many ways, because I've done it. I've done it myself. So GI Bill paid for my, I had an ROTC scholarship in college, University of Virginia, but I used GI Bill to get my graduate degree. I used GI Bill to pay for my first son's college education, right? And he graduated from Lesley University in Boston. I still have benefit for my now 11-year-old, all from the GI Bill, and actually one other program, but mainly from the GI Bill. So leverage it to get your education. And by the way, the GI Bill also paid for me to go to police academy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right? So when I wanted to be
awesome.
a street cop on the side, I used the GI Bill to go to academy because it's an institution that fell under their criteria. And then, of course, with the VA loan, no money down, buy your residence. You can even think about it from an investment perspective. Just buy it at the point where if you are thinking about renting it in the future, just keep the mortgage at a level where the rent will cover. So I used it kind of as a flipping mechanism. Okay, I'm going to live in this for 3, 4, 5 years. I'll refinance it, put a renter in. I know that's an asset for the future. I'm going to go get another single family home with another VA benefit loan and press repeat. But nowadays I don't need to, but press repeat. But if you serve, you have all these tools and resources you can use. People just have to find them and use them to their advantage.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
What was the journey like for you? So I admire all the different steps here, and it's
Thanks.
really easy. Like when you've been in the military and then you've worked at, I know you worked at Accenture Federal for a while. It's really easy to get locked into the culture of those organizations.
Oh yeah.
And it's really easy to start to like drift towards, hey, like socially acceptable behavior is,
Yes.
I want to get promoted to be the managing partner or the managing director or name the title of the organization.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But how did you make sure that you kept your
Mindset.
alignment mindset towards like, hey, this is my goal. These are my goals. These are the institutions that I work within to achieve my goals, and not really get drug into the cultural traps of like the other areas.
This goes back to Trying Life On, the media company that I started. But I want to be clear, whether it was corporate or the military, I loved what I did. But I was not interested in following the status quo path of things. That emotion that I felt when I was 15 years old traveling the world, and now I've been to 99 countries over 400 times, I was much more interested in experiences and relationships that the Air Force would give me, or that being a federal agent would give me, or corporate would give me. So even in the corporate space, I felt something, and here it goes. I'm going to do it in the military, and I'm going to do corporate. I was an analyst to consultant to manager, manager to senior manager, and the next step was partner. But when I got to senior manager, I started to realize I'm not making that much more money, but I'm getting all these more hours and responsibility. So I stopped taking promotions at that point. It's not that I didn't want to have impact. It's that I recognized that I should protect my time, take those amazing paychecks that this company was giving me, and invest it in real estate. Goes same thing for the military. When I got to lieutenant colonel, when I got to major actually, I was struggling to take the promotion to lieutenant colonel, because I'm a field guy. I wanted to be in the field with my agents. And, you know, we have a responsibility as senior officers to go back to headquarters, because you take all that experience and you translate it into policy that will help everybody else. That wasn't my path. I wanted to stay in the field. And once I got to lieutenant colonel, the writing was on the wall. It's like, you're going to headquarters, or it's time to move on. And I chose to move on because I had done my service. But it's not that I fought against the status quo in each side. It's that you have to leverage that career, leverage that military service for the feelings, the emotions, the experiences that you want, rather than just defaulting to status quo and what everybody else is telling you to do.
Yeah, and that's why we're going to come back with you in just a second. We're going to talk about leverage. We're going to talk about purpose-driven life, and all those type things. So we'll be right back with Maurice Philogene. Welcome back to Warrior Money. We're joined by Air Force veteran Maurice Philogene. Maurice, tell us how you got your start in the Air Force and what those principles, those fundamental characteristics that it gave you as a human being.
I'm going to say two things that it helped me with. First thing is getting up early, right? You and I have talked about this before. 4 a.m. is my prime time. When people say they don't have time to start businesses and whatever it is you want to do, get yourself in shape, my prime time was 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. That's 4 hours a day. That's 5 days a week. That's 20 hours a week, 80 hours a month, 960 hours a year. That's 1.5 weeks just by getting up at 4 a.m. that you've created. If you add another 4-hour block on a Saturday and Sunday, you've created 2 months of time. So especially the Army, but I'm an Air Force guy, but when the Army's talking about we've done more by 8 a.m. than you do all day, that value instilled in me. That to this day, I'm always up at 4 a.m. I was outside walking at 2:30 a.m. because I knew I had to take the 7 a.m. train today. So that value system helped me create businesses, helped me go after real estate, helped me stay in shape. So I'm very grateful for the military for that one. And then the obvious second one, especially because I was in a cleared environment, was just trust and integrity and the type of people I wanted to be around. I tell my business partners all the time, especially Quattro, because we handle $130 million of investor money right now. I don't want to be anywhere near the gray. I don't want any perception that I'm not following the rules or what have you. And that 100%, first my parents, but that came from the military for sure.
Yeah, I love that. You talked about creating time essentially.
Yeah.
And your ability to create time allowed you to do multiple paths when most people were just trying to figure out how to be on one path.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about, like, people will say, especially veterans will say, hey, I don't have time for this. I got kids, I've got wife, I've got my job. I don't know how to create more time to do this. Can you talk a little bit more about how you've created time and those things? So I think it's really important.
So I did my active duty time, but I was also a reservist. So I want to put this out. So when I was, and then I will challenge anyone who says that, okay? I don't think it's that you don't have time. I think it's you lack commitment to self. Now, and I need to caveat that because we all have responsibilities and issues and we're parents and things of that nature. So let me caveat that because it's not an easy thing to say. I worked corporate all day. This is if I was on the reserve side. I worked corporate all day. I would come home, sleep 2 hours, well, do homework with the kids, sleep 2 hours, wake up at 8 p.m., put on my police uniform, hit roll call at 8:30 p.m., eat dinner with the men and women on my shift, get some Chipotle or something like that. Patrol all night. I would do real estate calls in a patrol car. I would do business calls in a patrol car between calls. I would also sleep a little bit between calls, right? You do what you need to do. I would get home at 6 a.m., sleep for 2 hours, take care of the kids, hit court, take the train down to corporate, do that. And if the military called me to active duty, I would go do active duty. That is a lot. But just like someone getting in an ice bath for the first time, your body will acclimate to it. It will acclimate to it. So when people tell me, I don't have time, and I'm like, you sure? I don't have time. Are you sure? Have you practiced it? And this goes back to the notion of that I talk about a lot in Try Life On world, which is life is something you practice. It's not a destination. It's a rhythm. It's a rhythm of how you do things over and over and over. You get good at it and better at it. That's how I held 3 careers for 25 plus years. So it's possible.
And I think it also has to go back to the original comment. Like when you find your purpose or you find, you can't be doing that level of tempo, if you use a military word. You can't have that tempo if it's not aligned with a purpose that you care about.
Yes.
And that we find burnout as an expression is that you're not aligned to your purpose.
Yes.
And I think that's really what you're trying to describe.
It's 100%. If you don't, it goes back to the 15-year-old kid in me who wanted to be a federal agent because of Jason Bourne, who wanted to be a street cop because I would see patrol cars in people's driveway. You have to have emotion to life. And if you have that emotion, if it's that thing that's been in your head, there's no athlete, no professional athlete who's in the league, whatever league, because it's a job. There's pure emotion behind what they do. One of the things that formal education does to us in certain cases is very important, but we kind of pop out in college after competing in high school for valedictorian, MVP, AP classes, who's going to get to Harvard, who's going to get to Yale versus go to the community college. And we get right out into the work world, we start competing with each other. It's a bit unnatural because when you compete with each other, there's nothing wrong with competition. But when you're competing with your peer, you start taking things for the sake of the promotion.
Yeah.
For the sake of the title, for the sake of the extra pay. You lose all the passion that you had in the beginning. That's why when you are purpose-driven, when you know exactly why you're doing something, for you guys inviting me here, I was supposed to be on a plane today. I'm like, no way. I can go and I can give back to community and talk about these kinds of things because it's a passion of mine. You will do it if it's a purpose.
Well, we appreciate you doing that.
Even though you're on the 2:30 walk-in this morning.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we started this, right? Your money, because we're passionate about helping our brothers and sisters veterans find that purpose, help them in business, help them in their personal finance.
Yeah.
We say in the Army, shoot, move, and communicate, right?
Yeah.
So you have your own podcast.
I do.
Try Life On. Tell us about it. Why are you passionate about that? And what do you think it brings to the table?
And what is it? Like, what is Try Life On?
Yeah.
What is that?
So Try Life On is a moniker that I came up with to express the fact that you can literally try life at any time. You can go practice something. If you want to be a real estate investor, find another real estate investor, shadow them for a little bit of time. If you want to be a police officer, find a police officer, shadow that person for a little bit of time. If you want to live in the Mideast like I do and commute to take my son to school every other week, I commute from the Mideast. Well, that's not possible. Are you sure? Have you tried it? You Try Life On. I'm so good at it that it's just my normal nature now. I've made my extraordinary ordinary. That's what Trying Life On is about. If I wanted to be that federal agent, if I wanted to be the police officer, if I wanted to be in corporate, I had the vision, purpose-driven, and I would systematically just chop at it for years, not days, years and years, decades. Yeah. Alex Hormozi I stole this from him, but he talks about measuring over decades, not days. right? I was corporate for 25 years. I was military for 22. I was a police officer for 15. The whole podcast is to present people who have attacked life outside of the typical status quo. There are people who are doing such amazing things in this world, but unfortunately, certain social media platforms that will remain nameless present life in a very glitzy, glamorous, or status quo way. And there's so many people who are doing it different. So I started Try Life On to coach people in lifestyle design, to get the 5 freedoms. Now I'm producing some TV projects related to it. And it's all purpose-driven to help people do what I did, but faster, and build that mindset.
Yeah. I always think, I mean, it always looks glamorous from the outside. We Instagram, et cetera. But on that process, if you love the journey, it breaks the suck, because there's a lot of it that sucks, and a lot of it that you just gotta part of the journey.
And it's also this whole notion of strategic patience. I'm telling you, I struggle with this all the time. Like, hey, I want a result tomorrow, and I get really angry, I get really impatient about the result. But it's like in the worlds that we work in, it's like monthly, quarterly, yearly is how you're judged. But what you're really trying to do is create some momentum to allow yourself to have this freedom or this space to maneuver the way that you want to.
Yes.
And that's really what I think we're trying to describe here is like, how are you patient enough for long enough, consistent enough for long enough that allows for it to create compounding freedom, essentially. Yeah,
and also, okay, so I'll get back to the veteran, right, who's coming out or whatever. I will also tell you that I'm an expert of nothing. Yeah. I'm an expert of nothing.
You and me too.
Whether it's real estate or the businesses, what I'm very, very good at is finding relationships and focusing on the who versus the what.
We tend to end every section, but it's rapid fire Q&A. It's our warrior Q&A, and our first question is, who's a warrior that inspires you?
Who's a warrior that inspires me? Like in the military?
Literally anywhere. It can be,
I'm gonna go with my dad, and I want to tell you, he's such a muted man. I was just with him 2 days ago in Florida because my father, Haitian immigrant, grew up with no shoes, no running water in the north of Haiti. Put himself through teaching school, made it to the U.S., naturalized here, had 2 kids, and he actually raised my cousin too. So really had 3 kids. Served the Boston school system for 35 years, never once complained. I remember my father coming into the house and would lean back in the chair in the living room and would just crash at 6 p.m. when he'd get home, and then he'd open his eyes at like 8:15 p.m., right? I never forgot how committed he was to raising our family, and how just nice of a person he is. So from a model standpoint, it's my dad. He served just like we all did, but he served a school system, and all those kids are out in the world doing beautiful things now.
I love that.
My dad.
Last question. What's some money advice that you wish you'd known earlier in life that you know now?
I did figure it out relatively early, probably 26-ish. Financial freedom is not about millions. It's just not. It's not. I wasn't free because I had millions. I was free because I knew my magic monthly number. Okay, it was always $6,400. It was like $2,000 for my mortgage, $2,400 in bills. When I was doing the whole single family journey, I knew that I needed to generate the $6,400, and I was technically free. So while all these platforms and social media is saying you got to be a millionaire, no. All you have to do is have enough, in my world, passive income to cover your basic needs. And once your basic needs are covered, you have time. And once you have time and choice, life compounds on itself because you can do so many different things.
All right. Well, listen, that's our show. Subscribe, review Warrior Money on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts, or find us at Yahoo Finance. I'm Patrick Murphy.
And I'm Dan Coons. We'll see you next week.